information required. And the reason we're calling it a task force is because it is actually very proactive, and going out and helping companies to find the best solutions for their own particular circumstances. And so we've got about 150 lined up for that already. If anybody wants to join, just put task force in the chat, and one of our steering committee will get hold of you and we'll have a chat.
And the Golden Thread Awareness Badge, how does everyone feel about that, and what does that, do you think that would be a useful thing for everyone to have as a sort of a competence highlight?
It's about demonstrating that you're aware of what should be done. There is a level of confidence, but more than anything else, it's about that you're aware. You've read the documentation, you've read the guidance that we prepared, so at least you've gone to that level. It's about.
Yeah. And I guess the question for this group is as well, like on that, who has put their name forward? Will they find it useful? Is there anything that you think should be considered as well, again, with that badge? If anyone's got any input, that's great. That's what we're here for, because we're the operations people, so we need to have awareness of that golden thread as well. So
Darren, what do you think? I know you'll have something to say. If you're not somewhere having coffee. Oh, you are there. Can't hear you. No.
No. Oh, see if I can unmute her. Ah, okay.
She's waiting on IT to fix, so we'll come back to Karen.
Fabulous. Anyone else with any comments about the first agenda item about the Golden Thread Awareness Badge? Fabulous. Okie dokie. Number 2. Early engaged. Oh.
No. We'll wait till she shouts at us.
Oh, we still can't hear you, Sharon. Right, so moving on, then just for the moment, early engagement and life cycle collaboration. So this is something that we do talk about a lot, really. It's getting that early engagement so that we can, that golden thread goes all the way through, and it's to avoid what we have seen about these inefficiencies and information and the gaps that we've seen post handover. So we agreed that the maintenance and the input should be integrated from project start. I think that's honestly one of the key things that we do bring up quite a lot. Has anyone got any good practice? Any advice on that, where it's worked really well, where you see some pitfalls maybe, just to open up, you know, this is more of it's a working group, so we're here to talk and we're here to share good ideas and where it's worked well. So yeah, just opening up the floor a little bit just to discuss, you know, challenges and opportunities for the early engagement side of things.
I can't believe Jack White has nothing to say.
Yeah.
I don't believe it. Don't believe it.
I mean, I've always got lots to say. I'm not sure anyone wants to hear it though.
We do, Jack. We always do.
Well, so I mean, I guess my focus is very much not on that handover part. You know, we've got a lot of buildings to manage, and we get a few handed over a year. So it's kind of a small percentage. So it's not a focus. I would like to be able to work more closely with our development teams to kind of understand how that can work well, but there's been a lot of changes there. And I think, there's we can create a golden thread, if you like, from scratch about existing buildings. So, if we do get information passed across, great, but we're kind of set up to not expect that, because we've obviously got section 106s, we've got land lead, we've got a range of things. We use different architects, whatever it might be. So we could try and get them set up to provide information in the way that we want it, but the time and effort and expense to do that, I don't really see it as being particularly worthwhile. So it's not really been something that I've spent a lot of time and effort on. I've got some kind of broad agreements of how things should be passed across, but that doesn't mean that's how they are passed across. So
yeah, of course. And I guess that the broad agreements, the way it's tricky when you've got this, section 106, and you've got these developments that have sort of just been handed over where you had no input at that beginning stage. I guess, is there an opportunity, because it's about engaging with the industry, I guess, and creating that framework for just have all of this information ready in this way, because this is actually what we need for the way to operate, and to save that sort of state of information which we usually get at the end of a project. And how would you see that work? Would you think that would be a good idea, or actually do you think that's not realistic? Or
well, I mean, I think again, it's I think we need things that work for our own organisations. So I think broad agreement across the sector about what we need, and that can be, just what information we need in a kind of more database format, what information we want in documents. So floor plans are obviously going to be in a document, but building height, somewhere in the database. Something like that would be good as a kind of starting point of minimum asks. But I don't really see enough work going on on the kind of operations side to say this is the information we need to run a building and understand it at stock level, understand it at building levels. So I'm not sure we're coherent enough to be able to go to as a sector, to go to the development side as a sector and say, these are our minimum requirements. I'm not really sure that that's there.
Yeah. Richard, you've got your hand up. And you're on mute.
Hi. I, as an interim for the last 15 years, working on different projects for different clients, housing associations and local authorities. And I found that the handover has been so different depending on who you're speaking to. We know that we've got a set of information that should come over, but often it doesn't come over, or it's very difficult to find the way that it's filed to try and find it. So the last couple of ones that I've dealt with, we've tried to work with the contractor early days to, like you say, lay out what we actually want apart from what's required. And while they sound like they're going to be helpful, as soon as you ask for something, for example, the door, fire door markers, I forget what they're called now, but and same on sliding windows and stuff like that, which are all Q codes that you can get the maintenance information or residence information of how to use them. Always then comes at an extra cost. It's never part of the package that they think that they should provide. They think that's an extra. So I'd welcome some idea of trying to get a standard list And I know every building's different, so therefore it's not always the same, but you could at least have a standard lifts and the way that you want it laid out. Because like I
Yeah.
say, when I've been on the other end of the line, when there's been a failure, and I've then tried to go through the documents to find out what the specification was or whatever, it is so difficult because you don't know where they've stored it. So again, even if we could agree some sort of file layout so that we all know where we're going for the different bits and pieces would be useful, I think.
Yeah, and do you think that's what, with the introduction of the new BRPD, Building Regs Principal Designer, that side of things, you know, they're going to have to sign off the compliance of the design. Then you've got the BRPC who's going to have to sign off the compliance of the build. Do you think that those documents will become more and more accessible and more, because you're going to have to use them to prove compliance now, aren't you? It's not just we built the building, someone signs it off. And actually, as a industry, do you think they're going to take that as a sort of call to arms to make sure that everything's in there?
It would be really good if it did. But I mean, the problem I've sort of had, I would say, is with building control. They don't always understand, especially on the larger buildings. And I know they're supposed to be specialists, but there's a lot of people that I see that just don't really understand what that's about. So therefore, making sure that, because they're the ones that ultimately sign it off to say that it's compliant. I'd like to think it will. Let's hope it will. But the experience I've had today hasn't gone along that line, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very new thing, isn't it? We're all sort of still navigating what those roles mean, and it's stuff we should have been doing anyway.
Well,
But
exactly,
it's good. But obviously things, you know, Grenfell happened. There's a reason, you know, there's a reason why we need this sign off. We need this evidential thing. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what comes out of that. Phil, you've got your hand up as well.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I'm not involved in fire safety, but I'm coming at this from the perspective of 30 years working under the CDM regulations, and now working as we only do CDM principal designer. I don't do BR principal designer, but just listening to Richard and the comments that are being made about gathering information, what would have been the old Reg 38 fire safety information, exactly the same issues I've been having for the last 30 years, trying to get health and safety files put together and cross-referencing to O&M information. Everybody has their own different take on what's actually written in Appendix 4 of L153 that tells you what should go in a health and safety file as a minimum recommendation. So one of the reasons I sort of picked up the invite and registered was to basically understand, well, if I'm acting as the CDM principal designer, how can I support the BRPD, the end user, in making sure that all of the different bits of information that we need are gathered in a way that is easily accessible. You can actually find it rather than someone picks up a document that says, go and look at the O&M manual. And that's all it says. And you don't know which O&M manual, where it is or anything. So yeah, I mean, I feel the pain. So any guidance that there was to elaborate exactly what information is required for that golden thread has got to be a bonus in as much detail as possible.
Absolutely. And, you know, listening to you speak, it feels like there's a sort of collaboration communication thing between the BRPD, obviously, and the CDMPD, because for the BRPD to sign off, they will need to know all of the information that you're asking for anyway. So at what point, you know, does it become sort of a waste of energy having it in different places in different formats? Why don't we all see it in a sort of a holistic, we need this, we all need this. So let's just manage that in a way. And you mentioned the Reg 38 side of things and how they all, you know, this is a regulation that's been around for years and they still haven't got it right, or consistent, should I say. What would you, how would you start those conversations to improve that? Because it seems like a huge thing to even start.
Well, with all the changes and obviously the impending implementation of the Building Safety Act, we were actually working on a residential scheme which was in line of sight of Grenfell, included a 38-storey tower, a 24-storey tower, and a number of other very high-rise buildings. And 3-4 years ago, we were actually saying to the client and the contractor, even though it's totally outside of our remit, Reg 38, fire safety information, what's going to be needed so that when you actually finish the building and you want to get occupation, even though new regulations may not apply to you, there may be a retrospective need to get a license to occupy.
Mm.
And if the regulator then says to you, I need this information, I need that information, I need an electronic format, we need to be thinking about what we need. So we started that conversation, as I say, 3-4 years ago, with that client and the project team to chase up people to try and get, and even at the 11th hour, when we were finishing the building, people were still running around scratching their heads. So, but I would love to see, I mean, we've always taken the approach that if you think of a health and safety file done for the CDM regs, is like the index to an encyclopedia. And you've got all these O&M manuals that are full of information. If you can go to a single document that tells you where to actually find the specifics that leads you down that path, surely that's got to be a bonus. And I would like to see the health and safety file might do that in the same way it can lead you to, and this is where you'll find the fire safety information. And then that cross-references in the same way to all the other information. But I may be dreaming.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know who else can share sort of what I've been going through, because, you know, I'm writing building safety case reports, you know, going through those documents. It is quite an intensive task. So, you know, having a sort of a shared index or a shared understanding of how, I mean, already existing buildings, it's always going to be an issue. But, you know, if we're inviting 2,000 HRBs onto the market every year, let's get those working sensibly, basically, in terms of information file management. So yeah. And has anyone got any other comments on this subject?
Yeah, I mean, just listening to what everyone says, it is a universal problem. I mean, with regulation 36 or the 38 rather, before handover, we have a checklist which we go through to make sure we've got all of that information. And I think that particularly on fire safety information, there is definitely a lot more focus on that nowadays, on making sure that all the information is available. I think where we've found things are lacking is just general information about the building, etc. And the funny thing is you know, I've been talking within our organisation about this, in that we always do pre-occupation fire risk assessments. So with any new build, we always send someone in, do a pre-occupation FRA, pick up anything that we think, you know, requires attention. It could be something as simple as, you know, signage, or it could be something more sort of urgent. To give you an idea, one of the buildings that we got handed over fairly recently, we found that where they had the escape stairs, they kindly decided that they'd put a heater in there in case it got cold. Escape stairs. So there was an electrical heater as part of the build. So we've had to get them to take that out. It wouldn't have been something that someone would have picked up through looking through, you know, countless tomes of documentation. It was something that was done with eyes on. And because of that, I've also been advocating for pre-occupation stock condition surveys, because with stock condition surveys in the past, people have tended to wait till the building's handed over and occupied, and then scheduled for someone to go in there and just pick up the generic information about each flat, which of course causes problems if you've got new residents in there, because you have issues with access with some residents. You've got things in the way, furniture, all of that sort of thing that you're trying to sort of navigate around in order to check things. Whereas obviously if you've got that empty building preoccupation, you can send surveyors in, they can pick up all of that information, through, site. We know what information we require as a standard stock condition survey. So it means that we can collate the information on specific components far quicker using that method than trolling through umpteen bits of documentation to try and find out exactly what's in a particular, unit or communal area, etc. So I've now been pushing for future handovers to go down that route, so that yes, we will have the paperwork there, but in actual fact, from a perspective of man hours, it's actually quicker to send surveys in there and do a stock condition survey. As I said, that covers off a lot of the more generic components. As I said, and then Regulation 38 in particular picks up on obviously the more fire safety related things. So does the pre-FRA, sort of the pre-occupation FRA. So I think there's two ways of tackling this. And I think, yes, there definitely needs to be, if you like, it'd be lovely if we could get, as a sector, a predefined structure for information that everyone agrees on, which we could then, provide to, principal designers, principal contractors, and say, this is the folder structure we want you to follow, rather than each, designer or contractor just doing it their own way. Because it means that from one building to the next, you're looking in different places for the same information. So that's probably my 2 penneth.
And Dave, on that, so just as a point of interest, really, when you go and do the stock condition surveys after, do you find many discrepancies between the information that you've given? So, and with that, do you see where I'm coming from? That's concerning.
The correct answer, yes. Which is why we found so much value in it. Particularly, as I said, where we've done, post-occupation stock condition surveys, we've come back with completely different information than what the information is that's been provided. And as I said, and it's only because you've got eyes on, because you can read what it says in the documentation. You go, oh, it's this model of door and it's this rating or whatever, and then you get to the actual building itself and you realise, that's completely wrong. It was something that was probably agreed at the time, and then the contractor ran out of that door and thought, oh, I've got a couple in the shed that's slightly different, but they'll be all right, and stuck them in there, and no one was the wiser. So it does definitely clarify what exactly has been installed as built, as opposed to just reading through documentation.
And that, what you've just explained there, is the huge issue. This is what has happened in so many buildings. Yep. People, it's why we've brought in, the gateways and change management things. And it's, again, it'd be interesting to see as the Gateway 3s come through and the information is passed on to ops, whether actually the quality does change. So it might be something worth people just keeping an eye on and sharing. If you've had one that's successful at Gateway 3, but you've gone and done a stock condition survey, and actually the information that's passed at Gateway 3 is not quite what is there, then the process might not be working as intended, and we might need to, you know, highlight it to the industry, well, or the you know, whoever is believing that this is going to fix the intrinsic problem of, tell us what you've built.
Yeah, and the problem is it's often the case that it's not, you know, it's unknown to the, you know, principal contractor and principal designer as well, because it'll be a subcontractor that's gone in there to, you know, put in those particular components and make their own changes without informing anyone else. Because it is, you know, it's some, you know, subcontractor, you know, on site who's making a decision without really any sort of feedback to, you know, where the people that are actually providing the information to say, by the way, you know, that we said we were putting these in, you know, well, we found a cheaper alternative, so we put those in instead and not mentioned it, you know. And that, you know, we find that all the time with new builds. And I said, and that's why I think there's definitely, you know, a requirement for that sort of eyes on due diligence preoccupation, because it does answer a lot of questions. You know, with you know, it's simple stuff. Like, for instance, we, in a particular new build the other day, I was actually just walking around looking at the place because there was a few problems about it. Now, I'm no expert by any stretch of the imagination, and they had a cycle store in the basement with some nice convenient electrical plugs for people to go and plug in their, you know, their lithium battery, you know, mobility scooters and things like that. And the plugs didn't have locks on them, so they weren't lockable plugs. And I had to say, you know, surely we should have locks on these so that we don't have people just randomly going and charging batteries there. And they said, oh, yeah, no, they should have been lockable. They were lockable in the other two buildings. So we got them changed over. But no one would have known. There was nothing in any documentation that would explain that. And it is a fire risk. So, yeah, so it's just tiny things like that that you wouldn't necessarily have even seen in any paperwork. And even if you did, it would be buried in the small print of section 207, page 543, that those sockets weren't lockable. So, as I said, I think information is great as evidence, but often there's a gap between that and the reality of what actually is in the building to a small component level like that, you know.
And what level do you hold contractors to account for those discrepancies?
Well, this is where the defects period comes in. And this is where you spend loads of time. And once again, as I said, this comes back down to, you know, working out what requires the most time and effort. In that, with that particular example of those plugs, we just got a contractor in and changed the plugs and made a note of it in our asset management system that was in there. Because as much as you then want to go back to, you know, the original contract and say, oi, can you go and get a contractor in to go and do this or whatever, then you spend arguments going, oh, well, hold on a minute, you know, you should have notified us 6 months earlier about this, which, you know, how you would if no one had actually, noticed it. So you spend more times in meetings arguing about who's going to get it fixed than the cost of actually just getting someone in and getting it fixed. Obviously, if it's a more serious thing or a larger, more expensive component, then it's worth having those conversations and worth having those arguments. But in other cases, it's just better to fix it yourself, note it yourself, make sure in your asset management system it's got the correct component information.
Yeah.
Does that support the argument for bring back the clerk of works?
To be honest with you, and that's where there is an argument for that, without a doubt, because but funny enough, we went down that route originally, having a clerk of works specifically for alterations to buildings, to make sure that works were being done to standard and we were getting the right information. The problem was that he was absolutely brilliant on site, but absolutely useless with IT systems. so he even got to the stage where he would go on site, go and check the credentials of the contractors and throw them off the site if he didn't think they had the right credentials. He was absolutely brilliant at that. Getting back to putting, can you send that in an email? Oh, hold on a minute. Yeah, emails. Where's that one again? So yeah, so the role definitely, but trying to find, someone with a suitable skill set that can do both the actual on-site man management and the back-end information management is hard to come by. So Alex, you've got your hands up.
Yeah, hi there. Sorry, I'll just take my hand down again. Just quickly to kind of extend the conversation a little bit and bring some points home. It's absolutely right. It would be fantastic as a working group, especially to come forward with some recommendations about what the asset information requirements are for properties as they're working their way through new build, but also for existing properties, so we can apply those to understand as a template to say this information is missing about this particular property. Those gaps are just as important as the detailed information that we've actually got in there. And yes, it makes sense that we should have that as we do the 2025 standard, we do the 2026 standard, have that feedback loop that Bex was describing about making sure that following the completion of buildings as they go live, as we discover new things, as Dave has just mentioned, lockable mains, chargeable locks for electric charging in bike storage. That's the kind of level of detail we should feed back in. So yeah, let's have an information standard for the data that should be collected, at least, and use that as a template. Let's apply that. Rick's are doing an interesting piece of work at the moment to work on some new stock condition standards, and I'm watching with interest what they're going to be producing as a consequence of that. So that'll be good. But for my purposes, I'm interested in making sure that we've got sufficient information for the planned preventative maintenance on all the building components, so we know what activities need to be happening, what inspections need to be happening. I'm interested in making sure that we've got information about conditions so we can appropriately plan for life cycle replacement and investment in that building, looking at the whole life cost of maintaining those buildings. And I don't have specific comments on the clerk of works, but yes, they still do exist. There are people out there doing that job, maybe not with that title, but there are people bringing those sort of standards to bear. So this is definitely a recurring need. People are talking to, I'm talking to my customers every day, and if we could, as a group, come forward, BIM4Housing come forward and say, yeah, this is the information standard that we're suggesting that we need. That I think that would be a really worthwhile piece of work to do, and I'm very happy to put time forward to participate in that, to share my ideas. The last point I wanted to make was about there was an earlier comment about structuring data into folders and defining what information we need, which is a good thing. But increasingly I see that as that it's not so necessary as it once was to provide that formal structure for that information. And I'm coming at this from a building information perspective. With technology we have today, you don't need information held in a structured way. Unstructured data is just as good, just as accessible. You can ask the kind of questions of it that you need. So, but we are, familiar with the idea of filing data into folders, and if that's there, then that's good. We want it there. We want to be able to find it, but we also want to verify it and check the data that's there somehow. Missing against a template. Is it the right quality? How up to date is that information? Is it from 10 years ago, or was it updated yesterday by a visual inspection, or a bit of sensor information coming in as well? So this all needs to go into the big picture, and things are changing fast.
Thanks, Alex. And I want to just add to that as well, in addition to an asset management sort of look at it, my side, I work on building safety and making sure that the what is built is safe, and all of this feeds into, we need to make sure the building has been built as it's designed, because if it's not, if I go on site and there's a wall that's 30 minutes, not 60, that changes the whole, you know, the safety of that building, and why it's been doing it. So absolutely, you know, this is we could probably all wax lyrical about this for quite some time. But yeah, we're only as good as what we know about our buildings. Is anyone else got any points on this subject before we move on to the next? Lovely. Well, thank you very much for a good conversation there.
Yeah, funny enough, I think one of the further points with, I think item 5 actually sort of is covered off with what we've just said, you know, there. Yeah, I mean, item 3, industry challenges and gaps. So, you know, funny enough, this all sort of piles into each other, doesn't it, in a way, that, you know, knowledge gaps exist, especially internationally regarding sort of post-Grenfell regulations. And I think in the last meeting, you know, obviously it was noted that there were concerns shared about information overload and unclear client expectations and the difficulty of achieving standardized timely data submissions through all project stages. And I think you know, my view, and I don't know if everyone else's view is that, yeah, I think often operational teams tend to get invited in at the last minute, and it's left to the development teams to deal with the first, you know, couple of gateways, and it's only really at gateway 3 where operational teams get involved. And once again, I think that's also because operational teams tend to be quite focused on their one area of expertise, if you like. So, I mean, if you take compliance, you've invariably got someone who's very good with gas compliance, someone that's good with electrical compliance, you know, someone that's good with lift compliance, etc. And getting all of those people in the room with all of their shared requirements for information is pretty difficult to manage. So there should, in a way, perhaps you know, be looking at bringing in certain people separately to deal with their area of expertise, rather than just bringing everyone who's an interested party into one big room and then saying, right, okay, you know, let's talk through, you know, this information that's been handed over. Because as I said, you know, no one's an expert on everything. And that's where information overload, I think, can happen, because everyone's looking at their own area, but everyone's trying to talk and ask for things at the same time, which can be overwhelming to development teams, because they're being pulled left, right and centre, being asked for this, that and the other. So there is an argument, I think, for those operational teams to be involved in their own specialist areas at an earlier stage, so that they get the information as soon as it's available, for them to then give their apply their expertise to look for, you know, problems in that information. That is a business process issue in a lot of cases, and it's really down to the sort of the people commissioning those buildings to change the way they work to accommodate those specialist requirements, if you like. I don't know what everyone else thinks about that. Does anyone do that already? Or is it just basically dump and run, and then, you know, tell everyone, all right, all the information's there, go and find it? I know, for instance, one of the guys in one of the buildings we were dealing with recently, there was an issue, and he said, oh, right, I need the electrical diagram for the building. Could they find it? No, because no one had even thought about making sure it was there, because the fire guys aren't really that interested in, where the electrics are and, how the circuits are done and, where all the, the electrical stuff feeds back to. It was only really the specialist electrical engineer that needed that diagram. And at that point, it was a case of, oh, blimey, we're going to have to go back to the, principal designer and principal contractor and say, could you get that bit of information for me? Because no one had known when it was there. It wasn't, I don't think, a Regulation 38 requirement. So, yeah. Everyone in the room is obviously silent because they're all thinking, oh, hold on a minute. Yeah, that's happened to us as well.
Yeah, I don't know whether there's sort of a benefit to having a conduit, if that makes sense. Who knows what the operational people need? Because if there's that gap, you're never going to get the full documentation on it on handover, are you? Because you don't have that holistic operational view on it. So that's a huge challenge. I can.
Yeah, it has been for us, without a doubt, and yeah, and it tends to evolve into countless hours spent in meetings. Instead of people doing the job that they're being paid for, they're sat in a meeting arguing about, oh, well, where's this information? Where's it? Why hasn't this been provided?
Yeah.
Where, and it could have been handled far easier and far quicker, pre-occupation than trying to, rectify this post-occupation.
And I mean, so you said that you have a Reg 38 checklist.
Yeah.
Fab.
Yeah.
Can something like this, can we all help design an operational checklist, based on what we all know? We're all in this operations thing. We're talking about information management. That's what this group's all about. We're here to chat about it and see whether there's an easy fix, or if not, if there's a fix that we can sort of help develop. And what I'm hearing is that it's that section, isn't it? That section at handover where you do that check, at least of information, and then you go and do the stock, and then it's slightly different. But if you can check that you got the information in the first place, and that that your check is what the organization needs, it's not just like what you think you need, like, oh, we need to know the color of the door. It doesn't matter, but we do need to know how wide the doors are, for example, and whether we can have an industry standard and just work on what do we need to operate this building, because it's going to be the same not the same, very similar across the board. We all have to operate our buildings, so we all got to follow a very similar process. So how do we rationalize that?
Yeah, and I think, funny enough, it's interesting that, particularly with new builds, normally the first thing that we make sure we have when it gets handed over to operational teams is anything to do with gas, because obviously there are strict regulations around gas servicing. And then following that, there tends to be, I think we had a list of about 52 compliance related components that required, a specific servicing regime. So, and those will be universal across the board in the industry, because, everyone that has a new building knows that the lifts need servicing so many, that the boiler needs servicing, over a specific interval, fire doors need servicing over, an inspection. So it's I think it'd be pretty easy to pull together a sort of universal list of compliance related components that require, servicing and inspection. With stock condition, like Alex said, I'd be interested to see what our ICS are doing with this new thing for stock condition surveys. Because, I mean, we have a template that we use for that that tends to cover over, standard components, be it roofs, walls, windows, doors, that sort of thing, electrical stuff. And we have all of that stuff in there, plus obviously the 29 HHSRS requirements that we have to inspect as well as part of stock condition surveys. And once again, I would have thought those would be pretty universal across the sector. If we could get a few examples and compare one stock condition survey to another, and one list of their servicing components with another, it'd be interesting to see whether we could basically say, here's a definitive list or as close to a definitive starting point for both of those areas operationally. But yeah, and then some of the other stuff is not necessarily going to be anything that you're going to pick up either in documentation or through servicing or through stock condition. And I can probably give another good example of that one in that one of the new builds has got a gate to allow people to get into car park. It's a lovely solid steel gate with a nice sort of trellis pattern on it and things like that. You can only get in with a fob, but obviously there's a handle on the inside that you can open. This lovely lattice thing obviously sort of has holes about this big, and they worked out that people were sticking a pen through the holes to push the handle on the inside down and then gradually work it down so it was opening from the outside. So you could basically open this supposedly secure gate from the outside using a pen. Now that's something that you wouldn't pick up by reading any documentation. You just say, oh, it's great, it's got this solid steel gate with fob locking and all this sort of thing. That's once again only something that you notice either eyes on or because people have been breaking into it. So we've now had to go and get someone to weld a steel plate on the inside of this door in order to stop people being able to do that. Now, as I said, there are always going to be those sort of things that are never going to be picked up until the building's in use, basically. Yeah. But yeah, as I said, compliance, regulations determine, a lot of servicing and inspection schedules. So we know which components virtually everyone has to do. Stock condition, there are certain things that would be universal. Some people may go further with their stock condition surveys. Some people might do a light touch stock condition survey. I think we'd have to see different examples and whether we can use this group to provide those examples for comparison. Alex?
Yeah, just going a little further on that as well. I'll just speak up for some of the other nations in this wonderful United Kingdom we have. So we've got to be careful that we don't focus specifically on England, but I'm sure that we're talking nationally as well as potentially internationally in this group. But it's interesting how different housing standards vary across the UK, the government standards, I mean. So, for example, the Welsh Housing Quality Standard has been updated coming up for 2 years ago now. And that goes to a much higher level of detail. And in Wales, they're doing level 3 RIC surveys. So they're doing structural surveys as part of a standard housing quality. They need to know, is the building structurally stable? There are elements of that in stock condition surveys that you're doing in England, of course, but it's actually prescribed in Wales now. So and Scotland has got a completely different focus on the energy performance of buildings, which again requires a sort of a higher level of detail and knowledge about the building in terms of its fabric, its makeup, its wall construction, for example. That's really hard to know the construction type on the building if you just walk in for the first time. If it's a new build, you can potentially make some assumptions or look at some plans, but again, retrospectively, it's sometimes really hard to discover that information. I was going to make a point, as you were saying, about the standard building components. You can look to standards like Uniclass to allow you to categorize the main building elements and collect data around those, and enforce SFG type approach. So you can look at make some models of bits of equipment if you're thinking about the planned preventative maintenance, which really nicely dovetails in with again the total operational approach to the building. The thing that I've always struggled with, and it's more about my personal area of expertise, if you've got that, is I've got a big gap around fire safety, building safety, the technical aspects of, as Bex was describing, the difference between a 30-minute door and a 60, or a wall and a 60-minute wall, and how that'll compromise the building design and performance under a fire scenario. And I don't know how we're able to arm our stock condition surveyors, who are, obviously very knowledgeable, trained, accredited, professional building experts, but what additional knowledge do we need to be able to give to our building inspectors who are going into these buildings all the time to make sure that they're able to spot the problem with the fire safety issue that might be there, even if they're not doing a fire risk assessment? How can they spot, a 60-minute wall as opposed to a 30-minute wall? And how can we arm our colleagues in the industry with the people with the knowledge to be able to do that? Just thinking out loud, sharing thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the big reasons we do pre-occupation FRAs now, is before we let anyone into a new build. We do have, fire engineers and fire risk assessors go into the building and double check that everything is, as it should be. And hence why I know, things, like Bex mentioned, like, supposedly they're supposed to be fitted with 60-minute doors, and you find out that, 2 of the flats have got 30-minute doors, or, as one of them had like a gap of about 2 inches from the bottom of the door, so that it wasn't sealing properly. So, hence that got replaced. Pre-occupation, which was really good. So, yeah, apart from the fact that we then had, from a usage perspective, residents where they were putting nice welcome mats outside the door and things like that. Yeah, which was crushing the intumescent strips that were sealing the door and things like that. So we've had those sort of things you can't legislate for, but yeah, that's part of the reason for the pre-occupation FRAs. And then once again, those are fairly standard across the board. The templates will differ from organisation to organisation, but the majority of the stuff that's looked for is universal. So.
And I guess anecdotally as well, just as another example, we get these fire strategies, beautiful fire strategies, and I've come across one where it said that there aren't sprinklers, and I've gone onto site and there were, which then brings into question the validity of the information. Yeah. That's quite a big thing. You're not going to just. So yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, that's why this group exists, because I'm sure that we all share the same frustrations, the same issues, and it's about trying to find a sensible and realistic solution, because it's such a big problem that we can't solve the entire industry, but we might be able to solve our little corner of how to work it as well. So yeah. I think we've covered quite. Oh yeah, carry on.
Sorry, I was just going to say that one of the things that we've come across where our clients are using a third-party organisation to compile health and safety information, whether it's the health and safety file, the O&Ms, what we've started pushing for is to say, all right, you're not technically capable to audit that information, but request a validation statement or a conformity statement from whoever is providing you that information, so that when you upload it onto this electronic database, they are actually putting their name on the line that says, the information I have provided you with is accurate and is as built or as installed. So that then when you actually come to do your pre-occupation inspections, you find something's wrong, immediately they're liable.
And that's really what the BRPC should be doing. Again, it's a fairly new role, so it's going to take a while for it to really bed in. But the BRPC signs a piece of paper, ultimately, saying, I built this in line with the BRPDs, or also signed a piece of paper, design, so it is compliant with the building regulations. It's, you know, it's that final, like you say, that piece of paper that says, this is how the building has actually been built. Here you go. And if you go and find that it wasn't how it's built, then it's probably going to be quite often, you know, in the next few months, and you know, because it's a new thing. But hopefully that will change the attitude to change. In terms of, you know, if the principal contract, the BRPC is going to get penalised because one of their subcontractors made a change, like Dave was saying earlier, that was just a fire door, I will just change it to this one because it's what we've got in the garage. If the BRPC is going to get penalised for that, they're going to find a way to work around that, because, you know, it'll affect their bottom line at the end of the day, won't it? So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how these roles will impact how we receive, as operators, how we receive our information, because hopefully it'll change. It's in law now, you know.
I'm looking at it from the, again, as I say, I don't get involved in the fire safety side and the building regs PD, but we do as CDM, principal designer, and obviously it's been written into the CDM regulations since 1994, and we still have issues. So one of the reasons why I was interested in the working group was from the point of view of saying, well, as a CDM principal designer or a consultant to a CDM principal designer, and often working under a design and build principal contractor, saying to them that, you know, we're trying to understand everybody's role and what everybody needs to do, so it all ideally would all merge together and we're all working for the same goal. But yeah, we know that. I've worked at the clerk of works as well. I've worked in building maintenance before, so yeah, it's 40 odd years in the industry, we still get working at it.
Well, precisely. And I mean, the whole premise of this is to avoid the usual things that happen in design and build, where you don't design it and you design it as you go along, and you end up with maybe something that's not quite the same as it was at the beginning, but there's none of that change control. So what this process is trying to do is hopefully keep any change control under control, ultimately. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Like you say, you know, what you've been working on has been in law for many, many years, and people are still getting it wrong. But you know, we remain optimistic.
We can but hope.
We can but hope, certainly. So I think we've covered quite a bit of just in our general chats here. Covered quite a bit of what we have in the agenda. So we've spoken about Reg 38. And I know that Alex was mentioning about the UNICAS and the standardized information management. And I guess that falls into a sort of a different kind of handover to ops, because different teams in operations use different tools to complete what they need to do, their compliance activities, their operational activities. So it's about how that can be rationalize how you'd work that. So I don't have a lot of experience because I know it exists, because I know I've been in companies where there's various teams with different software packages that feed into different things. So it'd be interesting to see what people have experience with that in operational capacity, and how standardized formats could help, or whether it wouldn't help at all. I'm going to open that out to the floor, which is a quiet floor.
Hey, well, I'll go on that one then. So, yeah, I think I've looked at quite a few of the standards and tried to think about how they would work in terms of their application. And I have to say, I'm not a fan of any of them in particular. I think quite a few of them confuse form and function. So, you know, you're trying to classify something as say a steel door. Well, as far as I'm concerned, a door is a door, and it has a number of different attributes. The material, you know, does it have glazing, yes or no? Does it have this or that? And those are attributes about a door. But you know, if you go into the standards, it doesn't look at attributes against it. It normally tries to classify it by the type of thing it is and the material it is, which, you know, if you're going to look at a door and it was, you know, had a large glazed section, is that a glass door or is it a, you know, a timber door? But it's got glazing in it. You know, you could then classify it as, you know, door, because you can go up a level, or you can classify it as glass door, or you can classify it as timber door. No one's wrong, but you got three different, you know, outcomes there. So I mean, that's just one example, and a lot of them around the actions or services or systems or things like that aren't particularly applicable to housing, and particularly social housing. So I you know, I have to say, I don't think they're particularly useful. You know, it's a great starting point, and you know, what we've done is come up with our own and then mapped where we do link up. But I don't think the standards are particularly useful in themselves, in terms of just being able to say, well, if people just use that standard, then that'd be good.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that, Jack, because I must admit, and Alex, I mean, you probably have a view on this, but I've yet to see the successful import of a Kobe spreadsheet into an IT system that, you know, the operational teams use. Yeah, Alex is nodding his head. So
well, I cannot agree or disagree on that particular point. I think much work has been done on the handover of information from Kobe, mapping it in. I think where it's working well on Kobe data sets is on the spatial data. Mapping spatial information in is critical, and the next stage of what we need to be doing in holding our building information. I do like Jack's point about when is a door not a door. My grandmother used to have the joke, when it's a jar. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring that one in, lighten the humour a little bit. But you're absolutely right. We've got this. It is that critical point as we hand over from construction to operations, the Kobe process itself. We've got all this brilliant information that's been defined in terms of asset information requirements, the level of detail that's required during the phases of construction. You know, architect, contractors, and now we're talking about compliance people as well. All have got their input into the rich data set that's required, and then it hits the operational system. In my case, my interest is in the asset management and sort of facilities management areas, and a whole load of that information just isn't needed at that particular point. And so you could argue, if you're coming at it from the operational end, that you only need this data set. I'm only interested in, makes and models of what it is and where it is. But it absolutely matters, as you were saying earlier, in terms of, the electrical layout of the building. That's very important it is important from a fire safety perspective, and it is important from a planned maintenance perspective. And if you want to be knocking out walls or, extending the building, it's important to understand whether you can do that. So you've got to take this whole holistic view. But yeah, there are multiple IT providers trying to bring that information across, and there are expert systems out there and that will provide that a home for that data, and mapping that across is one of those current challenges. I don't see it happen often enough, if I'm completely honest. I've probably seen half a dozen Kobe data sets which have come with new builds that people have brought into systems that I've been in some part responsible for, half a dozen in whatever it is, 20 years. I'm sure there's a lot more than that are happening, but I just don't necessarily get visibility of it. Maybe I only get involved when things start going wrong.
Thanks, Alex. And does anyone have any other comments on this, or any experience, or any ideas? Anything that we can, I don't know, help with? I know that there are, especially for the door thing, I think that we did a fire door technical sheet, didn't we? So
yeah, for the purpose of the recording, and anybody who is not aware, you need to check out the BIM4Housing.com website, because we have published some data standards on information like there is a door sheet. So that does actually answer Jack's question of when is a door not a door. When it's a door set was my education piece from reading that particular piece of output. But that's some good quality work to help you understand the information requirements in there, and that also discusses some of the nuances which we've been discussing today. So that's #advert over and done with.
Great. So we've covered quite a lot, really. Information management, standardization, that handover piece. I know we've got, I think item 6 is international perspectives. Do we have any international perspectives present today? We had a really good conversation last time about those alignment with the practices. So if there's anybody who has anything to talk about in terms of that, please do use this opportunity.
Is there anyone who hasn't said anything? Bassett, I don't think you have. Christopher, there we go.
Hello there. Oh, sorry, little delay. Hello there. Yeah, so I'm from View City, and I'm wondering if anyone here knows View City. Yeah, so we do digital twins. And we have a smart city, like a platform that we've created that holds big citywide twins. And we're used by architects and planners. Also, recently, Clarion used us for generative design. So we can generate big engineering units as well for feasibility. So I'm here because I guess I'm on LinkedIn with Richard and George. And
sorry, are you the ones that do like the whole city?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Amazing.
And we do that in a gaming engine, but we've actually got a reboot coming through where we're using the Unreal Engine, but we're going to be our model will be platform agnostic. So we're creating machine readable models that can integrate with data layers, and you can put full BIM models into as well. So in terms of the spatial relevance of what we're doing, I think a lot of things, when you put them in PDFs and spreadsheets, they get lost, and it's really easy to misinterpret them or say, is that the right building? Where's building 1B? Or, I think that spatial sort of context can really right a lot of wrongs and can really reduce errors, certainly in feasibility. And one of the things we're also looking at, because we can now put in a bunch of different data layers, is it's all well and good having thousands of data layers, making them accessible at a click, and saying, right click, how many policy documents does this bit of the building here refer to? That's the kind of thing we're looking at the moment, is giving you quick access to something that you're in the right place, you know where it is, and now you want to see what relates to it. We're also to create the Unreal Engine reboot. We worked with an asset management company in New York who has a bunch of towers everywhere, and they wanted to understand things like fenestration in windows and who got what light where. Certainly when other buildings are being developed nearby and you have things like rights of lights, that's all something that you could look at straight away and understand exactly what would happen and model it yourself. So we are, with our relaunch, we are moving into territory where we now can accept BIM models, and we are now can sort of work with operations and asset management. And of course, we do have housing associations who want to use our generative design tool, who I'm working with. So I'm trying to figure out how we can some way be a part of this tapestry. And that's pretty much why I'm here, just silently in the background, because I can't really speak on any of the subject matter that your expertise can. But what we can potentially do is provide that context and that one platform that people can, put the information in where it's easily accessible. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
That's cool and very welcome indeed. I'm going to go back to Bassett. You're not getting away with it. Are you still there, Bassett? Nope, hiding.
Yeah, hello, good morning. This is
Hi.
Bassett speaking. Yeah, so I've been enjoying the conversation so far regarding how you basically standardize the information exchange between let me say optimizing it for the operational phase of the building as well. So I also agree with Christopher, because where I work at Parametrics, we basically digitize all these assets and basically prepare them for the operational phase of the building. So you've made some important points regarding like classification, like attributes and all those things. So what we've done like on our hand is basically not rely entirely on just the classification, because it just tells you like as Christopher, or I can't remember who said something about, or it just tells you if it's a metal door or if it has glass doors or blah blah blah. So we basically like added extra layers of information. So it's like there's a generic classification, like for instance case study doors, or you have like extra attribute or extra data layers that tells you, oh, for this specific door it's let's say it has glass, this is the material of the door, this is the dimension of the door, this is where the door swings into, this is the like, and also in terms of spatial relationship, it belongs to this core, this level, this flat, this room, this. So you have like a lot of plethora of information regarding just that door, and that is just like a unified classification. So it's like there is so much broader horizon to what you can achieve depending on each classification and every information that is required. So it's like across multiple disciplines, probably MEP as well. You can tell the ducting systems, you can tell like the piping, hot water, local gas systems, all these things. So you see how they work, the spatial relationship amongst each other, and all the required information that you need to know about specific classifications as well. Like that. Then in terms of successful integration with CAD FM systems, we've also been like exploring with some of our clients as well, like connecting and also connecting it to common data environments. We've tried around Zootech, Siemens, all this. So along the line, so it's a lot of I'm looking for the right word here. So it's still in development, yeah, but at least we're starting to see the fruits of all the labor we're putting in.
Okay, excellent. Very interesting. Interesting stuff. Right, so it's down to you, Phil. Do you want to chip in? No pressure. A little bit of pressure. Here you go.
I mean, as I said, my experience is more the front end of the construction, and when we're handing buildings over, using systems for compiling information, and haven't had a great experience of systems where they compile information. As I say, it just seems to be very much a case of, well, yeah, we'll put a load of information about doors, windows, walls in different folders, and it doesn't really give you a lot of detail. So that's why, as I say, we try to produce a health and safety file that acts as an index to that digital information, albeit that what we produce may end up as a PDF rather than a digital document. But we're getting there slowly. But I think, yeah, I haven't come across a platform so far that actually ticks all the boxes and covers all the bases. I think there is a company that does a specific Reg 38 information. So you can compile all your Reg 38 information digitally, and whether or not now someone's looking at it from the new legislation for fire safety, but I haven't seen anything that really captures everything in a digital platform.
We had a couple of years ago and 4 years ago 11-12 round table sessions on fire critical assets. We've got actually a review of those next week, 4 meetings. And one thing that came out was this argument about multi-platform or single platform, and it was pretty much you were involved with this, Alex, quite a lot, I think, that discussion, and it was pretty much decided that you have a platform, but it's totally interoperable technology, as Christopher said, technologically agnostic, so that basically whatever software people are using, you can plug it in. So I think from our point of view, or our majority view, was certainly within BIM4Housing, was that total single platform doing absolutely everything was it wasn't about that. Would that sum that up properly, Alex? You can probably say it better than I can.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the dream, isn't it, to have one solution that fits every need. But the reality is, we all have different perspectives on what we expect, what information we expect to do the jobs that we want and the different jobs that we have. So what you need to do, if you're looking at systems to do this, is be choosing systems that integrate well, but do the job that they need to do very, very well. So there's some high level requirements. I think we've probably got information requirements specific around data standards that are important. So I'd look for systems that can enforce those data standards. I'd also look for workflow capabilities so that you can orchestrate and not just store information, but actually move it through a business process to support your business processes. And then the last thing I'd watch out for or make sure that you can do is that you've got the ability to take the information out and about and update it. So it's got to be, you've got to be able to take it to site. You've got to have it there. What was it in the back office is available on the location. You've got to be able to interact with that information and update it. And I think validation is an important part of that as well. When you're working with mobile data collection, the concern in the back office is how accurate is that based on information that you've got, the records, the receipts you might have had, the information about, say that fire door we're talking about, says it's this particular standard and spec, but then when the fire engineer goes out on site and discovers that varies, whose information do you trust? Well, for me, in case any fire people you're the expert and you've had the most recent visit. So for me, that's that. But you need a policy decision and a system to support that.
Also, in the technology environment now, and it's not going to change, obsolescence is built in. You have to future-proof, because it's okay if you've got all your eggs in one basket and that company gets taken over. maybe the bit you really like or that is crucial to your business, they stop doing. Supposing they go like Skype and say, we're not doing that anymore. Or any number of other things. And that's something you have to future-proof against, because it can wreck your business.
Absolutely, and that's kind of where we're coming from, isn't it? It's about how we as operators can ensure that what we're doing, you know, the checklist or whatever is something that is a movable feast, you know, but we're making it in line with industry. It's not a software solution, it's
exactly
a operational solution. So yeah. All right, so we've got has anyone got any more on that point? We've got one thing left on the agenda, which is about warranties and post-installation inspections, which is actually quite an interesting conversation we had, because some warranties, for example, what was it, Dave? It was a lighting installation or something that was in a building, but that's operational during the construction phase, and the warranty runs out during the construction phase. So on handover, you haven't got a warranty on it. And it was just quite an interesting conversation that we had about that because it's a little bit bonkers. Yeah, it's just, has anyone got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it sounds fascinating.
Oh. So if anyone's got any in the final 5 minutes, anything like that, or if anyone wants to talk about anything else that's been on their mind that's come up during this, Alex.
Yeah, just quickly on the warranties point. So I suppose that's pretty much just a contractual matter. It's a case of understanding, you know, working with suppliers who understand that the component's going to last beyond the construction phase, and that their obligation to that would continue throughout. You know, electrical supply at the most fundamental level is a really good example of that. So yeah, that's the sort of contractual element. I'm sure there was a second point, but it's just got flipped from my brain. I'm having a senior moment. I'll go quiet and maybe come back in a minute. Sorry.
I was going to say we've come across it where, I mean, I don't do a lot of it, but housing where they're actually installing the white goods in kitchens and the like, and it's a case of telling the contractor, don't register any of the equipment once you've installed it. It's got to be left, you know, unregistered until we reach PC, so that we don't end up any warranty issues. So that to me was the big thing. It's a case of nothing gets registered until PC, so that there isn't that risk of warranties running out.
Yeah, fairly. You've just triggered it. It was my point was going to be around sectional completion, practical completion. So the matter there is, if you're working on, you know, a block of flats, you might have, as you've just described, you know, white goods, for example, that get fitted 6 months before the building gets occupied, and some of those might just be installed the week before, and the warranty period needs to run through there. So that's the other thing that yeah, very much is a, again, I think this is a standard thing though. I think this is dealt with through contractual, you know, good contract management processes, and agreeing with, you know, with all parties what's going to be happening as you run through that. So I think that's more of a legal treatment than an information requirement, but it does add a certain colour to the complexity of the processes, of course.
Great. Well, thank you very much. In the final 3 minutes, has anyone got any other things to raise very quickly? It's been a really good meeting. Thank you all.
I will share with you an anecdote to finish off the meeting, which you might find funny, or we didn't at the time, but we can laugh about it now. So we've got a new build, which one half of the building is private ownership, and the other half of the building is ours, which is social housing. They shared the same AOV system and fire alarm system across both sides of the building. But what they didn't do is put any isolation between both sides of the building. So we went to test the AOV system, as you do, because it's got to be regularly tested. And we tested it, and it shut down the lift in the private sector of the building with people in it. So all of a sudden, these people were stuck in a lift because we didn't realise that that was going to happen. And so we, in fact, we're in the process now of getting isolation put in so that we, you know, and we've done that. We've now got to do the next AOV test. And then we decided we were going to test the fire alarm system. So we triggered the fire alarm in one of the flats to see that it would all work and all light up on the panel. And guess what it did? It shut down the lift in the private side of the building, and the fire alarm went off in the private side of the building as well. So, yeah, so I thought I would share that little story.
Does that come under competence?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it probably came on over, you know, under the idea that they thought they'd save money by not isolating the two sides of the building. So, yeah, so... that's my final contribution to the meeting. And
a very good one.
Cool. Right,
Yeah.
I think we're virtually done for time, aren't we?
We are. Thank you all. Yeah, it's been really good.
Excellent meeting. Very, very good indeed.
Brilliant.
And yeah, catch up with you next time.
All right, take care, everyone.
Take care.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.